It's just my
Yeah,
head
but we
keeps
need
going.
so.
Well, I think honestly,
He's in here for a while.
I know, when George started.
I know. Oh,
You did?
I like him. Where do I take? Oh, okay.
I have,
Thank
thank you. It's good to finally see you, third's a charm, huh?
Hi.
Better now than after
All
this.
right.
Yes.
Is this put my pajamas on? But I gotta go home, put on another outfit that looks that wiggy. Oh, yeah, I take the, thing afterwards, CD, yeah, and that, and I watched some of the game. Chris, Chris Daly, I think it's Chris Daly, yeah, I think it's okay. Yeah, and so he got it always comes out like, well, I think nothing I achieved it, but, you know, I just this is going on too, like, yeah, because all the girls coming out, 60 like is great. Not gonna get, you know, Tarasi, she just got a good point that she was. Mrs. A, she said,
Should I just get started?
Yeah. They might trickle in, but.
fun, yes.
Okay, hello everyone.
Hello.
My name is Meg Goodman and I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. I have a private practice in Guilford and so I'm excited to be here. Thank you to Julie and George for inviting me. So today I just wanted to share with you what I call my 5 steps towards a healthy diet. Okay, so these steps are not complicated. It's really kind of basics of healthy eating, what I like to call the fundamentals of healthy eating. So whenever I say that word fundamentals, it reminds me of a movie I actually recently watched with my kids. The movie's called Hoosiers. I don't know if anybody's seen it. Hoosiers.
Great movie.
Hoosiers.
Hoosiers, okay.
Yeah. Came out in the 80s. So Gene Hackman is in the movie, and he's the basketball coach for an Indiana basketball team, high school basketball team, and at this point he says this quote that just really resonated with me, and it's when he's in the locker room and all the kids are surrounding him. They're getting ready to go out and play the state finals game. And so he says to them, forget about the crowds, the size of the school, their fancy uniforms. Focus on the fundamentals that we've gone over time and time again. And most important, don't get caught up thinking about the winning or losing of this game. Okay, so I feel like that really pertains to setting nutrition and health goals. So you don't want to get distracted by the fancy diet plans. I know there's a lot of things out there, can be confusing, but it's really just best to focus on the fundamentals, just like Gene Hackman said. And you may feel like, well, I've heard this over and over again, and I do feel like I talk about it over and over again. But I think they're really important points, and hearing them and then doing them and doing them in a consistent basis is very different. So, and consistency is really the key here. So if you're able to be consistent with some kind of basic points, then you'll be able to achieve the main goal, which is really a long-term, healthy, sustainable, doable eating plan. So you don't want to get caught up in the winning or the losing from day to day, or I had a good day, I had a bad day, because you're really just in it for the long haul, okay? So, when I was setting up my practice, I was trying to figure out what to call it. And so I kept coming back to the word balance because I feel like balance is the most important word that has to do with a healthy diet. And so if you have balance, then it's likely that you'll have all the nutrients that you need. And you'll also be having a variety of food. So if you have a variety, then people feel like, oh, my diet's not so bad. Feels more like a healthy lifestyle. You get something that's sustainable and not something restrictive or a diet that has a finish line. Okay, so we're always going for balance. Okay, so this brings us to our step number 1. And our number 1 step is to aim for a balanced diet. And this is one of your handouts. And you might ask, what does that mean, a balanced diet? So I like to explain it using the healthy eating plate. There's a lot of versions of this plate out there. I felt like this one kind of brought in a lot of different components that we'll go through, but I like this one. So if you picture that circle as your plate, and then you divide this circle in half, and you fill up half of your plate with all fruits and vegetables, and mostly vegetables. So for older adults, I really push the vegetables. And as far as fruits and vegetables go, you want to try to have a variety of different colors. So that will ensure you're getting a variety of different nutrients. But again, you want to aim for that whole half a plate. And then on the other side of the plate, you get a quarter of whole grains. And the whole grains are really your complex carbs. Okay, so they're your healthy carbs. And I think it lists some examples, like wheat bread, brown rice, things like quinoa. And then the last quarter of your plate is for your protein. And you want to try to aim for lean proteins, like chicken and fish, and then also including some plant-based proteins, like soy and beans, lentils, things like that. So if you can arrange your plate in this way, then you're really filling up on vegetables that are really high in nutrition but low in calories. So it can help you to maintain or achieve a healthy weight. And I've definitely had many clients who come in and they don't necessarily change the foods that they're eating, but they change the, how they're arranged on their plate, and that helps them to lose weight. So I always kind of like to start people here with this very basic plan. And the other thing I like about this is that up in the corner, it talks about healthy oils. So I feel like having a healthy fat with your meal is really important. That it helps you to feel satisfied with the meal, keeps you fuller longer. So it mentions olive oil. Another healthy oil that I always recommend is avocado oil. But this also includes things like avocados, nuts, seeds, nut butters, things like that. So it's important to have a healthy fat with your meal. In the other corner, it talks about your drinks. So here it shows water, which primarily is what we should be having. You can also have milk, it mentions, and 100% juice, but it does put strict portions on those. But mostly you're looking at kind of 0-calorie hydrating beverages. So if you're able to do this plate, say for lunch, for dinner, you're getting a half a plate of vegetables, then you have a pretty balanced diet. And you're probably pretty close to getting that recommended 5 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day.
That's a lot of food. It is, it's a lot of food.
It can be, yeah. I mean, it depends on how big the size of your plate is. But I guess the point is that you want to have kind of the base of your meal be fruits or vegetables, really. Whereas, say, the old plate is, the base of the meal is the the starch or the carbohydrate, whether it's rice or pasta or something like that. So this is kind of the new healthy plate where the focus is on the vegetable. So you can do this, but it can be in smaller portions. Okay, so that was number one. Number two is to read your food labels. Okay, so this is also a handout. I do realize the print is kind of small, so I apologize. But with the food labels, you want to look at those, particularly when you're in the grocery store, so you know what you're getting, what you're buying. And first you look at the serving size. So everything here is 2/3 of a cup. Everything on that label pertains to if you ate 2/3 of a cup. Okay? And then, so first we come to calories. It may be a lot, it may be a little, it's all okay. It's just good for you to be aware of, what you're taking in with that food. Do you want to spend that amount of calories on that particular food? Then it shows the total fat, and it's broken down into saturated fat and trans fat. Saturated fats, you want to try to keep those low. Technically, the recommendation is to aim for less than 10% of your calories coming from saturated fats. And then trans fat, try to keep those 0. And most foods have taken trans fats out of them, which is it's a chemically made fat. But there are still some where you can find it in there. So reading the label is really important. And then cholesterol. So over the years, kind of the recommendations surrounding dietary cholesterol has changed. We used to have a guideline that said you should limit dietary cholesterol to no more than 200 milligrams per day if you have elevated cholesterol. But they had an expert panel review all the literature on that, and in fact, they ended up doing away with that guideline and say that if you're concerned about your cholesterol, to focus really on your saturated fat intake. That there's a lot of evidence that shows a high saturated fat intake can raise your LDL, or what we call your bad cholesterol. Okay, so that's more important to look at than say the cholesterol, in an egg. Sodium is always fun. When I have a client and they start reading the labels for sodium, it's always very eye-opening for them. Yeah. And there are guidelines around that. So if you have hypertension or pre-hypertension, then you want to limit to 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day. If you do not have hypertension, then limit to 2,300 milligrams a day. And when people are, when we're saying, okay, we're going to look at how much sodium we're taking in, one way I think is a bit easier to look at the numbers through the day is to kind of break it down in meal by meal and aim for about 500 milligrams of sodium per meal, kind of as a rough guideline. Or if you're looking at in the frozen food section and there's frozen meals, you can kind of use that guideline. Is it over 500 milligrams of sodium, for this meal? Kind of thing. So, okay. And then food label continued. So carbohydrates. That is broken down into fiber and into total sugars. And fiber is an important one to monitor. So women over 50 are supposed to have at least 21 grams of fiber a day. And men over 50 are supposed to have at least 30 grams of fiber a day. And, if you can, more is better, really. Try to have those amounts at least, but if you can get more, and your body can tolerate the fiber, then it's really better for you. And then, so total sugars. Total sugars on the label can be confusing, I feel like sometimes to people. So the total sugar means it's the grams of added sugar that's added during processing, plus the grams of naturally occurring sugar that may be in the product. Okay, so for example, in this product, there's 10 grams of added sugar, and that means there's 2 grams of naturally occurring sugar to make the total 12 grams of total sugar. So that's a good one to look at, this, where it says includes 10 grams of added sugar. You want to try to keep that added sugar, for as close to 0 as you can, basically. But examples of added sugars are white sugar, brown sugar, honey, maple syrup, high fructose corn syrup. So sugar comes in a lot of different forms. And again, those are the ones that are added during processing. And so naturally occurring sugars are the sugar found in fruit, and then also the sugar lactose in milk. So those are kind of the 2 natural sugars. Okay. So let's see. Since we're on the topic of sugar, I am always amazed at how much sugar is added to a lot of our foods. And one of my favorite examples to show is this 20-ounce Coke. So if you drink this whole thing, this is the amount of sugar that you'll be consuming from just this drink. So I just feel like that looks like a lot. And technically it is a lot. Because there is guidelines from the American Heart Association that says that women should have no more than 24 grams of added sugar per day, and men have no more than 36 grams of added sugar per day. So this does not pertain to the natural sugars, the sugars in whole fruit, or the sugars in dairy and milk. Again, these are the added ones that are added in processing, or that you might add at the table. I'm not really sure why men is so much more than women. I don't know if I agree with that, but in any case, those are the recommendations. So if you're a woman, you have this one soda, you're already twice, the recommended grams for the day.
legal limit.
Exactly. So I have a demonstration here, and we have a challenge. Okay, so the challenge is to see, is it possible to get through a whole day's worth of food and eating food that tastes good, and stay under the 24 gram limit recommendation. So I have all these test tubes here that has measured amounts of grams of sugar of these different foods. And here is this is the recommended amount to not go over. So this is 24 grams of sugar. So that's kind of our guideline. So I marked, we're going to do 2 days. And so we have day 1, and then we have day 2. And then I marked, I don't know if you can see that, but a little black line. And so that's the 24 gram limit. So as we go through our day, we want to see if we can stay under that black line, okay? And we're not going to drink a soda because we know what happens with that. Okay, so we start our day with coffee. And we have 1 cup of coffee with a teaspoon of sugar. And that's actually this is 1 teaspoon of sugar. So this is from our coffee. And then we decide to have some cold cereal. Okay, so we went to the store, we saw Great Grains, it looked healthy. It has, a picture of whole grains, fruit, nuts. We think, all right. And so reading the label, we see in 1 cup has 12 grams of added sugar. So we've got to start that. So this is 12 grams of added sugar from our cereal. Yeah, and then we decide we're gonna have almond milk because everyone's drinking almond milk now, and it seems healthy. And so we picked up the vanilla flavored, and turns out there's 13 grams of added sugar in 1 cup. So we have our almond 13 grams of added sugar. So we'll put that in. Well, we're gonna go on with our day. And so we come to lunch and we have a great big salad because we're trying to make healthy choices, right? And so we pick up this sweet Vidalia onion dressing, Ken's dressing. And we're only gonna have 2 tablespoons, because, we're trying to be good. And we've got 9 grams of added sugar from our 2 tablespoons of dressing. So we're gonna add that in. And then, we were really thirsty. We decided not to have a soda, but we wanted a sweetened iced tea. So this is 48 grams of added sugar. Oh goodness. Now we're gonna make a mess. Here, maybe I'll just take this thing off. And then we decided to have an afternoon snack. And so we chose our Greek yogurt, which is a healthy choice, has lots of protein in it. But we decided that we didn't like the plain yogurt, we like the flavored yogurt. And so that turns out has 10 grams for the cup. So we're gonna put that in our day.
Don't fit.
No, not kidding. And we top it with some granola, because granola, it has oats, it has some healthy things in there. But this one, 2/3 of a cup, it has 15 grams of added sugar. So that's really gonna boost our intake, but we're going with the day. And then for dinner, rather. So we get to dinner, and we're gonna have a whole half a plate of vegetables, because we're paying attention to our diet. And we have some lean chicken, and we use our Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. And again, we just have a little bit. We just have 2 tablespoons, and we get 16 grams of added sugar just in 2 tablespoons. So that's kind of surprising.
The whole cake.
I know, right? And then we're also really thirsty, so we decided to have our lemonade, which is another 38 grams of sugar. And so that ends our day, because we're being healthy. We decided not to have dessert. That's just going to be too much. And so we kind of went over. And interestingly, the only sugar we added of sugar to coffee. And so all of the rest of it was added in processing. So I think it can be easy, if you're not reading your labels, to consume that amount of sugar in a day. So we're gonna move on to day 2, and we're gonna try to do better. So in day 2, we are going to start the day with coffee, but we're not gonna add any sugar to it. And then we're going to have old-fashioned oats, because they don't have any added sugar, so we don't have anything to add. But we want them to taste good, so we might add some cinnamon to it. We could add some fresh fruit, like berries, something like that, nuts, kind of make it more of a balanced meal. 0 grams of added sugar there. And we can even put some of this almond milk on it, but this is the unsweet 0 grams of added sugar. So that's good. We're doing really well with breakfast. And then for lunch, we're going to have a salad, and we picked up this oil and vinegar dressing. And this is actually, so I don't know if you can see it, but this is a company I actually really like. It's called Primal Kitchen. It's in kind of your regular grocery store, but they have a lot of good dressings and marinades and things like that. And all the ingredients are things you can recognize. And they have no added sugar in their products.
Excuse me, what did you say was the name of it?
It's called Primal Kitchen.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. So we had lunch and we had seltzer.
Sure.
So we didn't have any added sugar to add there. And then for snack, we chose our plain yogurt. So even though it has sugar in it because of the lactose from the milk, it doesn't have any added sugar in it. So there's nothing to add there. And then we can add fruit to it, so we can give it a little bit of flavor. We can add some fresh fruit to it. We could actually add a little honey to it. So this is just 1 teaspoon of honey, and that's 6 grams of added sugar. So we will have that. And then we get to dinner, and again, we have all our vegetables, we have chicken, and we have barbecue sauce, and this is an unsweetened. So it's again the same product, the same company, but they don't add any diet sweeteners or any sugar. So that's unsweetened barbecue sauce. So nothing there. And since we've done so well, we want to have dessert. So we picked up some of this dark chocolate. It's a 72%. And if you have a third of a bar, it's 8 grams of added sugar. So we can add that in. So we did pretty well.
Yeah.
So it is possible. I mean, the foods will taste different, granted, but it's a lot better for your health. And then also by eating or choosing foods that are low in added sugar, we also chose healthier foods. So we had a lot more fruit added in, and we had, nuts and things like that, higher fiber foods as well. So there can be a lot of benefits to really trying to reduce the added sugars in your diet. So that was our challenge. I think we did pretty good, day 2 anyway. Let's see. Okay, so just to finish up on the food label, at the bottom is the vitamins and minerals. Like in the past few years, they added in vitamin D and potassium. Those are ones that tend to be low in people's diets. And then percent daily value. This, people I feel like get confused about this. So basically what it means is how much a nutrient in a serving of food contributes to a daily diet, but only if that diet is 2,000 calories a day. So in this example, if you eat 2/3 of a cup of this food, and you consume 2,000 calories that day, then you will be using 7% for the day. So you can see where sodium is. But that percentage only pertains if you're eating the 2,000 calories. And a lot of us aren't eating 2,000 calories a day. So I kind of feel like it's not that useful. But one thing it is useful for is you can use it as a quick glance when you're looking at labels saying while you're shopping, where in general, if something under daily value says 5% or lower, then the nutrient is low in that product technically. And then also if it says 20% or higher, then the nutrient is high in that product. So in this example, the saturated fat says 5%. So that means technically this is a low saturated fat product, whereas the grams of added sugar is 20%. So that's high. The added sugar is high in this product. So I feel like it can be kind of a good quick glance guide. Okay, so that was number 2, reading food labels. And then number 3 is to choose whole foods more often than processed foods. So hopefully you're choosing, whole foods often don't come with a label, but in this case, that's good. So, and in order to do that, you generally are forced to shop the perimeter of the grocery store. So you might hit the produce, or really fill up your cart with different colors, fruits and vegetables, and then go hit the meat, dairy, and then once you get into the aisles, you just want to shop carefully. So there's a lot of things in the aisles we really don't need to look at, but there are some healthy items too. So in the aisles, you want to read your label, and you also want to read the ingredient list. So on an ingredient list, the whatever is listed first is what is most abundant in that product. So if you pick up a product and you see the first or the second word is sugar, probably not that healthy.
Put it back.
Right, exactly. Put it back. So, so that's a good thing to look at. And then also look for things like dyes and preservatives, red 40, yellow 5, these kinds of things. They're just chemicals. We just really don't need to expose our body to them when there are healthier options. Although when you're in the aisle, it can get confusing because items do seem like they're healthy, they look like they're marketed as being healthy. One of the examples I have is jelly. So you might be looking at jelly and you think, well, it's loaded with sugar, I don't want to choose that. And then you think, okay, look, great, a sugar-free jelly. But then when you read the ingredient list, it's okay because the first two ingredients start off with water and strawberries. So that's a good sign. But as you continue to read, it has preservatives in it, it has diet sweeteners, and also red 40. So it's not going to be really a healthy choice. It's far better if you can, say, put peanut butter on an apple or try to use fresh fruit instead. So it's important to read the label and look at the ingredient list. Let's see. Okay, number 4 is to eat at least 3 times a day. So it doesn't have to be 3 big meals a day, but if you can just at least spread your food out throughout the day over 3 eating sessions, I feel like, especially for older adults, if you're consuming protein, your body can utilize it better in that way. So at least the 3 eating sessions. And remember back to the healthy plate. So that's what you want to aim for. The vegetables and then balance of carbohydrate, complex carbs and protein as well. So that was number 4, is just eating at least 3 times a day. And then number 5 is, and this one is very simple, but it's eat more during the day and less at night. So I can't tell you how many people come into my office and they don't hardly eat any breakfast, they don't eat lunch, they're busy, they're out, whatever, they're distracted. And then they consume 80% of their calories after 5 o'clock. And I think it's hard for people to maintain or achieve a healthy weight in that way. So it turns out that meal timing is actually really important, probably almost as important as the foods that you choose. So ideally, if you can have with your 3 eating sessions about the same amount of calories per session is nice. That helps with energy levels. And then this is something I really try to push with all of my clients, is to avoid eating within 2 hours of going to bed. That food that you're consuming after dinner is often not as healthy as food you might consume in the afternoon. And most people have probably consumed all the calories they need, after they finish their dinner. So I usually say with at least the 2 hours, but if you have something like acid reflux or, struggling with that, to go 3 hours is actually the recommendation. And people have a lot of success with that. Just making that change alone to avoid the nighttime snacking. I've seen people come in and start losing weight. So that's a really important one. Okay, just to recap. So the 5 steps, the number 1 was to aim for a balanced diet. So remember the balanced plate. Aim for half a plate of vegetables. And number 2 is to read your food list or labels and also your ingredient list, so you know what you're taking in. Number 3 is to choose whole foods instead of processed foods. So remember, shopping the perimeter of the store. And then eat at least 3 times a day. So spread it out over 3 times a day. And then lastly was to eat more during the day and less at night. So when you get to dinner, you've consumed the majority of your calories already for the day. Now, even though these are kind of, simple or basic, not complicated, it still may feel overwhelming to do all of those things on a consistent basis. So what I would recommend is just choose one of them and focus on that and work on that until it becomes a habit. And I would choose the one that you're most likely to do, or the one that feels the easiest to you, and start there. And then back to Gene Hackman, focus on the fundamentals. I think that, don't get distracted with fancy plans and, and adding up grams of this and that. It can get very overwhelming. Where sometimes I feel like if people take that time that they may use for tracking or adding numbers or this kind of thing, and use that time for food prep of whole processed foods, that can really help with your diet. So focus on the fundamentals. And then one of your last handout, it says it's the Mind Diet. So I wanted to give you kind of it's a more structured eating plan than, say, the Healthy Plate. And the Mind Diet it's really a healthy diet for anyone. It stands for the Mediterranean – Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. And what they did is they took the DASH diet, which there's a lot of evidence that is a healthy, good diet, and they combined that with the Mediterranean diet. And so they found that when they did that the people, that this was really a diet that helped to improve brain health. And there's research showing that the Mind Diet is better for preventing cognitive decline compared to either the DASH diet or the Mediterranean diet alone. So the Mind Diet is very effective, I think. So that handout kind of gives you a breakdown of foods to choose, and then I think at the bottom it's foods to avoid, basically. So that's kind of all the nutrition information I planned to share with you. This is my contact information, which is also in the flyer I gave you. And like I said, my office is located in Guilford. I do accept insurance. And those are kind of common topics that people come in with, but I'm also open to new things and, researching and helping with other topics as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, either about what we talked about today or anything that you might wanted to ask in general.
When you're diabetic, is there a fruit which one would have more sugar in it? Are they kind of even or?
For fruits?
Yeah, for fruits.
So technically with diabetes, you can have any fruit. There are ones that cause more of a spike in people, although it is something that is, I'd say, very personal. Between people, it can vary. It also varies on what you eat with that fruit, too.
Oh, okay.
Like, are you eating it with a meal or do you eat it in the middle of the afternoon? But in general, I know berries are very low glycemic. And then higher ones, like people with diabetes often tell me they don't eat bananas, oranges, or grapes. Those are kind of ones I feel like people often say they avoid, that they feel like they just skyrocket their blood sugars. But I actually know from experience, so I used a continuous glucose monitor, which is a system that kind of attaches to your body and then it can monitor your blood sugars throughout the day. And one thing I noticed was that if I ate fruit by itself, like my highest number I got was when I ate a large apple just by itself in the middle of the day. But if I eat fruit with a meal, it was completely, different. So there's other things besides that, the food itself, that impact how your body responds to the fruit.
Okay.
But in general, people say this to me, and I actually usually don't say, oh, you have diabetes, do not eat this, do not eat grapes, I will say, you need to watch, we'll talk about portions, and then I will say, make sure you eat it with the meal and not by itself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that the AHA dietary guidelines for added sugars for women are less than 24 grams per day, but how do they regard naturally occurring sugars in, fruit and
Yeah. Dairy,
anything
yeah.
else?
So they don't. I mean, they say you can eat it. I think the thinking is that the fruit comes with fiber, comes, a whole fruit comes with other nutrients, and so that is good for you. And technically, fruits and even starchy vegetables are low-calorie foods in general. So we want to have a lot of those in your diet. So I think they don't want to deter anyone from eating fruits and vegetables. And I think as a society, that is not our problem, eating too much fruit, or certainly not eating too much vegetables. So really it's just focused on the added sugars. And honestly, adding a teaspoon of honey, teaspoon of sugar to your coffee, I also don't think is a big issue. I think it's people are eating foods and they don't realize that there is so much sugar added to it. But they didn't give guidelines saying, only have this amount of fruit or milk, really.
When most of us grew up, I think milk was dairy milk, and now there's soy milk, almond milk, all the different. Can you comment on the pros and cons of the different types of milk, assuming that you don't have an allergy that has
Right. So if you can tolerate cow's milk, I think it is a healthy food. I always recommend a low fat or a non-fat as opposed to whole, just in terms of calories and saturated fat. The plant-based milks, like soy milk, for example, can be a good choice if you're taking in soy, because it has as much protein as cow's milk. So other milks like oat milk, almond milk, coconut milk, they don't have any protein in them. So it kind of depends on what you're using milk for. If you're just putting a little bit on your cereal, it's probably fine to use any of them. But if you're drinking it, as a source of protein, then you would have to go with cow's milk or soy milk. But the other thing, the plant-based milks can be good. If you're concerned about calcium, you can still have a plant-based milk because they fortify it with calcium. So that's actually something if you say, I want to switch to almond milk or oat milk to look for. So it is because there are products out there that they don't fortify, and it might say, you might think that that's healthier because it seems like it has less ingredients, that kind of thing. But I think if you're using a plant-based milk, it's important just to look and see if they fortified it with calcium. So, any other questions? Those are really good questions. Thank you for listening today. If anyone has an interest in kind of a more personalized meal plan or diet recommendations, feel free to just reach out to me. You can, call, email, or even text. I'm available. So thank you so much.
I just noticed underneath, for example, broccoli for
Reading about parking
For every disease you have.
It does, but protein is important.
How do you stop this? Okay.